In 2003, a geneticist at the Max Planck Institute pulled data from a sample so old it shouldn't have yielded readable results. It did. What the sequencing showed didn't match any known human lineage. Not Neanderthal, not Denisovan, not Homo sapiens. It matched something that had no name. For years that finding stayed buried, not classified, not hidden behind locked doors. Just filed, labelled inconclusive, set aside. Here is what no one told you. The evidence for a civilization older than anything in the textbooks has never been missing. It has been in the data, in the stone, in the genome the entire time. We simply weren't asking the right question. And when a handful of researchers finally did, what they found forced a choice: rewrite human history or look away. Most looked away. The story we've been told is clean, elegant even. Around 10,000 years ago, humans who had spent hundreds of thousands of years as wandering hunter-gatherers suddenly settled down. They planted crops, built walls, formed cities. In Mesopotamia, in the Indus Valley, in the Yellow River Basin, civilization appeared almost simultaneously, as if switched on. Historians call it the Neolithic Revolution. Archaeologists date the earliest known cities, Sattel-Huruk, Jericho, Eridu, to this precise window. The consensus is firm: before this moment there was nothing. No writing, no organized society, no record of anything resembling structured civilization. For over a century that framework held. Textbooks were written around it, museums were built to display it, entire academic careers rested on it. And for most of that time, the evidence seemed to agree. Because buried beneath that tidy timeline were findings that didn't fit, anomalies quietly logged, quietly sidelined, quietly absorbed into footnotes that nobody read. The official story was never wrong enough to collapse, it just kept accumulating exceptions. In 2008, archaeologist Klaus Schmidt published his final comprehensive analysis of a site in southeastern Turkey. The site was called Göbekli Tepe. What Schmidt's team had uncovered was not a village, not a burial ground, not a crude seasonal camp. It was a complex of massive, elaborately carved stone pillars arranged in precise circles, decorated with sophisticated animal reliefs built approximately 11,600 years ago. That is 6,000 years before Stonehenge, 7,000 years before the pyramids, and critically before agriculture. Before, according to everything we accepted, humans were capable of organized, large-scale construction. Schmidt told National Geographic directly, the site was forcing a fundamental reassessment of the origins of civilization, not a refinement, a reassessment. But here is what stopped researchers cold. Göbekli Tepe wasn't built by a settled society. The people who raised those 16-foot pillars had no permanent homes, no established food supply, no known writing system. Which means the accepted sequence stability first, then monument building was backwards. Something organized them, something taught them. And then around 8000 BCE, the entire site was deliberately buried. By whom and why no one has cleanly answered. Göbekli Tepe alone would have been remarkable enough. Then came the DNA. In 2017, a team led by Dr. Johannes Krause at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology began sequencing ancient genomes from across Anatolia, the Levant, and the Zagros Mountains, the precise corridor where civilization supposedly spontaneously ignited. What the data showed was not a population inventing itself from scratch. It showed a genetic bottleneck, a dramatic, sudden narrowing of human diversity approximately 12,000 years ago, followed immediately by an explosive dispersal of a single ancestral population, outward, in every direction simultaneously. Not migration, not gradual spread. A pulse. Dr. David Reich at Harvard's Department of Human Evolutionary Biology, whose lab produced corroborating findings published in Nature in 2019, described the pattern as consistent with a small founding population, seeding multiple distinct civilizations across an enormous geographic range. That alone reframes everything. But what neither team could explain was the directionality. The pulse didn't originate from a known settlement. It originated from a region that, according to current archaeological records, should have been empty. The source population had no address, it had no name. It had apparently no history. Here is what the data actually says. The founding population that seeded civilization, the one with no address, no name, no traceable origin in the archaeological record, carries genetic markers that do not descend from any known hunter-gatherer lineage present in the region before them. They didn't evolve there. They arrived. Dr. Esk Willerslev, one of the world's leading ancient DNA specialists at the University of Copenhagen, has spent 2 decades mapping prehistoric population movements. His team's work, published across multiple studies in Nature and Science, keeps returning to the same unresolved anomaly. There is an ancestral ghost population embedded in the genomes of every major early civilization: Sumerian, Indus Valley, Proto-Egyptian, that has no archaeological parent. No site, no bones, no preceding culture. Just a signal in the genome, older than everything around it. We didn't build civilization from nothing, we inherited it. From a population that predates our entire recorded timeline, that was already organized, already dispersing knowledge, already shaping the humans around it, and then, somewhere between 10,000 and 12,000 years ago, simply stopped appearing in the record. They didn't disappear. They were already gone. This is not an isolated anomaly. Every major civilization that emerged in that 10,000-year window carries the same fingerprint: a sudden leap, a founding myth describing teachers who arrived from elsewhere, and then silence. The Sumerians called them the Apkallu, 7 sages who emerged from the sea and handed humanity the foundations of law, agriculture, mathematics, and astronomy, then withdrew. The ancient Egyptians described the Zep Tepi, the first time a prior age ruled by beings called the Neteru, who established civilization before pharaonic history began. The Vedic tradition records the Saptarishi, 7 ancient sages, who preserved all human knowledge across a catastrophic transition and reseeded it afterward. 7, always 7, across cultures with no known contact. Dr. Sergio Gomez Chavez, archaeologist at Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology, has noted near-identical structural parallels in Mesoamerican founding traditions: arriving teachers, catastrophic transitions, deliberate knowledge transfer. These aren't borrowed myths. The civilizations were separated by oceans. What they shared was the memory. And now the genome is confirming what the myths preserved. Something was here before us. Something that knew what it was doing. Something that left or was made to leave. This is the point where honesty matters most. Not every researcher follows this evidence where it leads, and their objections deserve full weight. Dr. Ian Tattersall, paleoanthropologist and curator emeritus at the American Museum of Natural History, has argued consistently that the convergence of founding myths across civilizations reflects shared psychology, not shared history. Humans facing the same existential questions: origins, catastrophe, knowledge independently generate the same narrative structures. The 7 sages appear everywhere because the human mind reaches for the number 7, not because 7 teachers existed. On the genomic side, population geneticist Dr. Pontus Skoglund at the Francis Crick Institute has cautioned that ghost population signals in ancient DNA are frequently artifacts of incomplete sampling. The absence of archaeological evidence for a founding culture may simply mean we haven't excavated enough. The record is fragmentary. The silence proves nothing. These are serious objections. They cannot be dismissed. What neither side can honestly do is claim the question is settled. The genome contains a signal that has no confirmed source. Göbekli Tepe was built by people who, by every prior assumption, should not have been able to build it. The evidence doesn't prove a prior civilization, it simply refuses to disappear. We have spent 10,000 years building a story about ourselves. That we began in darkness. That we climbed slowly, painfully, from nothing, from scattered bands of cold and hungry people upward toward writing, toward cities, toward the accumulated knowledge we now call civilization. It is a story about human will, human ingenuity, human independence. And it may be only half true. Because inside every genome on this planet, inside you, there is a signal from a population that has no beginning we can find. No origin we can excavate. No monument we can point to and say, here is where they started. They are present only in what they left behind. In the geometry of Göbekli Tepe's pillars. In the identical myths of teachers arriving from water, transferring knowledge, then vanishing. In a genetic pulse that moved outward from an empty coordinate and seeded every civilization we have ever called our own. We did not build this alone. Something preceded us, something prepared the ground. And the most unsettling part is not that we don't know who they were. It's that somewhere in the data patient, quiet, unsequenced, they are still waiting to be found. If you're the kind of person who can't accept, we don't know, as a final answer who follows the evidence past the point where textbooks stop, then you already know what the subscribe button is for. This channel exists for exactly one kind of person, someone who suspects the official story has edges that haven't been examined. We examine the edges. There is more in the record than anyone is telling you. Stay closer.